Hey, what's up, everybody? So it's been a long time since I've posted a video, but one thing I kind of hate is, and I know everybody does it, and I'm tempted to do it a lot of times, but there's a lot of people, in their cars posting videos about, basically about life and what's going on, and a lot of difficulties in life. So what I'm going to do a little bit different is I got a screenshot up, and that's kind of showing my earnings. I'm not going into great detail, but DoorDash, and not just DoorDash, but a lot of the food delivery apps are really becoming trash. And one of the things that it forces you to do is, if you can, it basically forces you back into a regular job, because you cannot rely on this income like you used to. Right now, I am coming back from a long distance drop off that I accepted 2 deliveries, and they took me way out the way. And hopefully I get a tip. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna be like these stupid videos. You can't beef with these customers. You can't force anybody to get a tip. But these delivery companies is getting over on drivers, having them drive long distances and not really getting compensated. That's why I really fell back away from Roadie, because Roadie was having me, going to Tractor Supply store and picking up stuff, huge pieces of equipment and all kinds of stuff. And man, I really have shut down Roadie. But I have turned it back on. It's hypocritical, but I have turned it back on a couple times to see what Roadie's offers were, and a lot of it has still been trash. So I've been working in the gig economy probably now for over 8 years, and I do have another full-time job that is coming to an end. So I do have, a couple of streams of revenue, but the vast majority of those streams of revenue are working for different delivery companies, and I'm at the point where I'm just like, man, I'm done with doing food delivery. I got to find something else to go. But I tell you, the main draw and the main addiction of doing food delivery is the fact that you do get to make your own hours, and it kind of keeps you like a hamster in the wheel. Sometimes you make good money, and you go out and splurge and you live a good life, and then next month, you're back hurting. You're out here trying to take everything in order to get, to make ends meet. And I haven't watched the video, and I can't, in its entirety, but I've seen some videos where it's like, older couples out here, and when I'm out and about, you run into older people, still working, because DoorDash, Uber, all these different companies, the path of entry is easier than someone going out there getting a degree or working a 9 to 5, or getting certain qualifications. And some of us are past that. We know what it's like. You get to an age and you're like, we know what we know. I saw a guy that worked at the post office doing some videos. And when I'm watching these videos, I'm looking at him and I'm like, yeah, this dude is spitting wisdom, but everybody is in this trap. And this guy was talking about, you never get rich by working for someone else. And also, he's in his he's in his postal uniform. And he's in his postal uniform. And I'm like, man, even these jobs is coming back and firing people because they keeping it real, so I mean, I could see the Postal Service coming back at him and being like, saying some BS like, oh, you were on the clock when you were filming these YouTube videos. So right, even for me filming this, if I was at a regular job right now, a job come back at me and say, hey, you were supposed to be working, and we looked at the timestamp, and you know, we got you, you know, you doing YouTube videos and stuff. You know, you kind of like what they used to call it, like moonlighting. So, you know, but regardless, everybody out here is trying to have multiple hustles. And then, you know, even when I look at people like, you know, people, I watched some videos today talking about the Hawk Tuah girl and, you know, rappers and all this different stuff. And rappers are starting to fall off and all these different people. But, you know, I get to the point sometimes where I think to myself, it's like, man, I cannot knock the hustle because everybody out here is trying to survive. And like, I feel like with social media, a lot of people influence like people. They think that's where the money's at, you know? Okay, so even when I make this video, I'm not making this video to make money. I'm just making this video to be transparent. But the grass is not green on the other side. I even watched a video, they were talking, you know, I saw Blueface talking, I saw Justin Bieber talking, and it's just like, even they're frustrated about like social media and you got to be on all the time and the criticism and all this different stuff. Well, it's not just with social media, but these jobs want you to be on all the time. They want you to be super productive for the job, but then not reward you for your time and effort and pay you like pennies. And I feel like, you know, nothing's never been perfect, but, you know, it's all like, what is retirement anymore? You know, you're seeing people working to the, you know, just they work forever. I mean, even like celebrities are not like, they're not, you know, sitting down somewhere and enjoying life and being off camera. You know, all these celebrities are jumping back on, you know, Instagram. You know, I see Stacey Dash on Instagram, and I'm like, sit your fine ass down somewhere. Like, why are you on Instagram? But the thing though is that people are trying to generate revenue streams. People are still trying to stay relevant, and it's just like, but nobody's got that money where they can just like say, hey, you know, I'm gonna live life. I'm off the grid, whatever. So you got everybody stuck in this perpetual hustle. And, you know, they got all these, you know, videos about, you know, people doing the bare minimum at the job, quietly quitting and all this different stuff. But in general, like, society is becoming fatigued and everyone is like, what am I working for? I mean, even this, so when I go, you know, you go online, okay, as a man, and you see, you know, you see beautiful women all, you know, all over the world, different places. You know, you maybe you see a local Instagram model or whatever, but you get to the point where you look at them and you say, damn, like, you on all the time. You're in steady rotation. You're always trying to, like, your situation is never good enough to sit down somewhere. You know, so you see the majority of women now, single, online, constantly trying to promote some product, some brand, some, you know, some life coach thing. And here's the thing about them damn life coaches, man, is I saw a chick, pretty attractive chick, that lived close by, worked close by. She talking about being a life coach. Then one day I see her looking all dusted and disgusted, you know, in a dirty white t-shirt, you know, and I'm like, you know, what part of the game is this? So none of this information, like, I feel like we're giving out a lot of information to people, but everyone still feels stuck. And it's just like, like I said, in the perpetual grind of trying to make things happen. And then, like I said, it's very taxing to the psyche and your mentality to be always in the perpetual grind. Sometimes, you know, I'll get on these apps, and the apps are addictive because you can make money. But sometimes I just end up like taking a nap because I'm just like, I just need, my brain needs to rest. I know I can get out there and make money, but your body still, your body still wears down. And then also too is like, have you ever like seen like truck drivers? Truck drivers make, pretty decent money, but then they'll have like issues. They got back problems, they're overweight, all this different stuff. You got to keep control of that stuff. Even as a delivery driver, my back be hurting, my left arm be hurting. And I'm like, damn, but it's like I'm making my own schedule. It's easy, pick up and delivery, but still you get to a point where you feel like a gear that's getting ran down. And I'm not saying this to depress people, but it's just like you got to continuously like kind of take breaks and switch the game up so you can survive. But everybody, I'm looking at all these different jobs, and I'm looking at people, and I'm just like, man, people are, crashing out, or, people, you think people got money like that, and that's not really the case. So I feel like as a society as a whole, we need to address the fact that like work is getting to the point where it's too much work and it doesn't mean anything. Like also too is like, even in the dating, the dating world and stuff now, everybody's trying to like optionality and red flags and all this different stuff. They're trying to pick the best of the best, but that's not how life works. Everything that it's a struggle, but you can collab with other people where you do the things that you love, and it's not that much of a struggle. But just I see it. I mean, I was looking at like I said, the Hawk Tuah girl, and she's like, oh, we're gonna do this, and she's trying to plan her next social media venture. But it's like, man, attention span, people be done moved on. And then so out of desperation, somebody on social media will go out here and just start doing all kinds of foul stuff, do some OnlyFans. They'll do some, they'll try to be outrageous to garner attention, but in the end, you're stuck. Now with this food delivery stuff, it's just like a person that's stuck in the grind of food delivery. You'll pull all-nighters. There's a dude I watch up in Denver, and he be pulling all-nighters, and he be out there, and I'm like, but part of me is like, man, if I got my grind on like him, I would be, I'd be somewhere. But he's still on his grind, and not to fault him or whatever, but I'm like, but where does it go? Where's the money go? What, nobody, people will tell you quick, I'm not a financial investor or whatever. So where do you put your money for it to grow? What business do you put it in? People like, you open a restaurant. Man, these restaurants, when I do food delivery, and stuff, you hear about how food delivery takes, large cuts of the profit from these restaurants. And then, I'm a person, everybody tries to be like, oh, don't you get hungry while you're doing food delivery? Not really, because I don't like the majority of the fast food chains, but I like the little moms and pop shops. But when I go to them little moms and pop shops, I see the DoorDash logo. I see we deliver for Uber and stuff. But I am aware, and I've done my research when they talk about how these companies take large cuts of these places, their profit. And like I said, me just driving, I mean, sometimes, look, I'm telling you, my city, I know a lot about my city now, because as a delivery driver, I drive freaking everywhere. And sometimes, it's fun, not being stuck at a cubicle, not having to deal with people. Sometimes it's just a smooth drop off, but sometimes even still, I have to, I got to communicate. I got to test stuff. I got to do a lot of stuff that people, may not think that delivery drivers do, but I do all that stuff. But it's work. But I like, like I said, I like making my own schedule. I like hustling at the hours I want to hustle. You know what? This morning, I woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning because I got up, my stomach was hurting, so I went to the bathroom. So then I got up and I hustled a little bit, but it was on DoorDash, and DoorDash is doing like all kinds of stuff. They say they're trying to protect customers and stuff, but a lot of the stuff is really like impacting the drivers. Talking about dash by time, and then it's not, it's making you rush and, acting like you late and all this different stuff. So I'm like, man, so DoorDash, I sparingly turn it on at certain times, but DoorDash is just not my go-to no more. But I'm like, okay, but when the next app is going to do the same process, they're your go-to, and then all of a sudden you struggling to make bank. And I always thought, like, with these delivery companies, this is the thing, what I liked about it though, was because it kind of made, the economy, I mean, it supports the economy, I guess, but at least people can make an honest living, as long as you got a car, whatever. But they start doing stuff to you where, like I said, it cuts into your profit. And then, you got to be worried about just so many different things. I mean, there's so much, like, you'll get stupid people doing stuff on Instagram or something, and then that's penalizing all drivers and stuff, and you just want to make an honest living. You got people running up on people because they didn't tip. And I'm like, man, I've always been like, that's on you, but people shouldn't be tip baiting you. But even like just earlier when I took these long distance deliveries, if I would have known it was driving that far, I would have left it for someone else. But all these different companies, not just DoorDash, but they need to, they're not going to do it. They're just taking the profits, but it's just like, it's not beneficial for the drivers. So if enough drivers band together and didn't take the money, it will force these companies to force their hand. But it's just like, people say, it's just like they get rid of experienced drivers, and then they have, new drivers out here getting bamboozled. And, and it's not like, and it's not young people, it's old people still trying to work. Older people still, out here trying to hustle and stuff. And everybody acts like, I don't know, man. I mean, everybody's situation is different, but I'm beginning to look at the world in a completely different lens. And I'm like, most people that you think got it like that don't have it, because behind the scenes, a lot of things happen, where people, are trying to help out family members, health goes down, all this different stuff. And people are not really realistic about it. I mean, the younger generation just really feels like, man, F what you talking about. I'm getting my money, whatever. But they don't see themselves in some of these people's positions. And me, I may clown somebody, I may leave a comment or something, but I'm beginning to feel like, anybody can get it. It's just like anybody can be in that bad situation, and your whole life change, and nobody is vulnerable to that stuff. And even like right now, okay, I'm out here on the late night, I'm gonna grab me something to eat real quick, but it's just like, your life can change at the drop of the hat as a delivery driver out here, getting in some crazy altercation, somebody lying on you, you get in a car accident. And even the guy that I saw, talking about the post office, he's like, man, is it worth it? Is it worth me getting in some, is this company actually paying me enough to protect me if I get in an accident or whatever, I'm unable to work? And for the most part, no. A job is just getting you, got people out here living paycheck to paycheck. And even when so if you're not living paycheck to paycheck, what you're doing to justify, whatever, to get out there and live a little bit, you put stuff on credit cards. You do that, and it just keeps you in steady rotation. And then you got people even talking about, like, in relationships, people think they can just jump in some relationship and be with somebody and let them foot the bill. And it's just like, it's not going to work like that. This society, as time progresses, mark my words, is you're going to have a bunch of people. This is what it should be forcing people to do. It should be forcing people to band together and work together. But the way society is working now is that you're going to have a lot of people, you're going to have more mental illness, you're going to have more depression, you're going to have all this different stuff because people are not admitting that the pressure is on. And people have to work together. People got to try to understand people's situations and have empathy for people. But at this point right now, it's not like that. So, but I have to take breaks. Like right now, I'm taking a break. I'm not pulling an all-nighter. I'm going to sleep on it, and then I'll get up and do the same thing tomorrow. But even with me saying I'm doing the same thing tomorrow, I'm almost at the point, I'm at the point where I'm like, man, I need to apply for a job. But you know what? This is what people won't admit to either. Is when you're out here doing DoorDash, you're out here doing Uber, whatever, you're working an unqualified position you're just interchangeable. You're a gear. They switch you out. Even people that work at Amazon, you work as an Amazon driver, you feel like, I'm doing a service to my community. I'm out here driving this truck. I'm dropping off packages. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But they can replace you. And I don't know the game plan or the exact foolproof plan to not make yourself expendable and make you a valuable person to everybody, so you always got somewhere to jump to. But it's becoming rough. And even people criticize females from jumping, for use their body and trying to do whatever, but it's like the survival instinct. Men have a different survival instinct. It's just like, I'm gonna get out here and hustle. I'm not gonna sell my body and stuff or make deals with deals with the devil in order to make things happen. But it's just like, you basically like just work yourself to death, and then those people that make the deal with the devil, they ain't happy. Anybody, these people in the music industry, these people in the film industry, whatever, it's just like, man, everybody's attention span is short, and they push on and they leave where they act, they leave you where you're at. So, I would like to go through all these metrics and stuff of DoorDash, but what can he fix? This has been like kind of my solution. Like I turn on during certain times, and that may be early in the morning or whatever. But it's just like, I don't get the volume of deliveries that I did in the past. Then also too is like, I mix and match. I do Walmart Spark, I do Uber Eats, I do Grubhub, I do Instacart. And, I was looking at Roadie, but I just bounce around. And then I got a full-time job, but, like I said, that full-time job is coming to an end, and I'm at the point where, like, it's really hard too, is when you think about these jobs, like, even if a job pays you top dollar, there's plenty of people that opt out of taking those jobs because of the time that you take at that job. Like, look, I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say there's a woman that you're in love with, and you want to spend time. You want to spend time with her. That's your main goal. But if you go out here and get this job that, yeah, it makes, you initially get the job and you like, okay, that's cool. This is going to support the lifestyle for me and this woman to live in, and blah, blah, blah. And this is going to get me closer to her and stuff. Man, that job ends up consuming most of your time. and your relationship falters. And then you out there, you out here looking crazy. And then like I feel like all these jobs now, I feel like you got to have an exit strategy. I mean, I feel like both men and women got to have an exit strategy of like, yeah, we're going to stack this up, but we got to do something where we can completely get the hell up out of here in the end, and be, like I said, not in the public spotlight, living a good life behind the scenes, not putting up a front, because I feel like everybody now, they put up they put up a front. And then later on, especially with social media now, they expose how people really are getting down and how people are really struggling behind the scenes. But folks, I just got, if you heard that noise, I got a $5 tip. And I like I said, I drove like crazy. It's not here on this screen right here. It's not on this DoorDash screen, because I was actually driving for Uber when that happened. But man, like I said, I mix and match. I hustle. I got other stuff going on, but I'm at the point, like I said, I'm about to apply. But even that though is just like, you sit down and you apply for these jobs, you get these jobs, and you're just like, but is this truly helping me reach my goal? And the goal isn't to to floss and live in excess. It's to be like I said, to quietly be behind the scenes and live a good life, and and spend time the way you want to spend time.